Conference and Awards 2022. I am Dinesh Mishra from Mesmix Media, and I take care of strategy for the company. Before we start today's discussion, I wanted to give you a quick introduction about Mesmix Media. We are the publisher of Dynamic Manufacturing India magazine, B2B news platform machineinsider.com, and host of Makers and Movers, a fortnightly thought leadership series focused on Indian manufacturing and supply chain industry. What started with few webinars back in the first week of lockdown in March 2020 turned into a series of webinars, and later on we have published a special collector's edition called 17 Samurai, where 17 leaders from the industry has contributed during that tenure. And when we published this magazine, the idea came that why not we come up with something. Then our editorial board sat and we launched this special called Samurai Awards. Over the last 3 years, Samurai Awards has grew year on year, and awards drew a great encouraging response, and we owe a lot of it to our esteemed jury members who brought credibility and gravitas to the forum. Today is day 4 of Industry Samurai Week, and we have been joined by industry experts to have a discussion on this topic. I would like to invite Mr. Magesh Srinivasan, founder DataMentor.in, to chair the session. Over to you, Magesh.
Thank you very much, Dinesh. A very warm welcome to this panel discussion on the topic of 21st century workforce challenges in technology and manufacturing. Somebody once said, every generation is a product of the environment they grew up in. And in 1974, Studs Terkel wrote in his famous book, Working, work is about a search for daily meaning as well as daily bread. Today, the world population is 8 billion. We have entered the post-pandemic period, which has ushered in several challenges in dealing with workforce all over the world. Expectations of people have changed completely as they have seen a world that was forced to work under the lockdown. However, for the world to progress, despite the setbacks brought about by the pandemic, it is imperative that the people discussion needs to be vocalized and various perspectives need to be heard. People challenges have to be dealt by us, the people. Managing human capital has become more complex in the 21st century. There are several dimensions to people today than what was witnessed in the last century. Today's business leaders have to deal with a multitude of unprecedented issues, challenges, and opportunities. Here is a list of themes to deliberate upon during our panel discussion. Number 1, phygital life versus physical life. We are living with our digital twins floating around in the World Wide Web. We have entered the era of Web 3. Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z or Gen Z, are they all different? If so, how and why? What are the tensions and interpersonal communication gaps that exist between these generations? How do we resolve it? And how do we synergize in the workplace? What is the engagement problem? How do we address this at the workplace? Are there ways to improve the shortening attention spans and prevent digital distractions? There is a need definitely today for work-life balance. There is a need for mental wellness initiatives in large corporations as well as in small startups. There's a need for social accommodation of diverse mindsets and lifestyles because humanity is changing. The need for being sensitive about differently abled people is important today. Accessibility is prime. The need for being inclusive in every possible way. These and more various issues will be addressed by our esteemed set of people that we put together and as panelists in order to make this discussion engaging and hopefully bring alive the topics that is most relevant in today's culture as well as workplace, whether it's technology or manufacturing or businesses in any ecosystem around the world. So let me briefly introduce to you our panelists. We have an eclectic mix of people, leaders in their own right, in every sphere of work and life that they live. First off, Ms. Sharvani, who is the CEO, co-founder of Anectos Rewards and Retail, based out of Bangalore. She's a woman leader and entrepreneur, and she will be speaking about her experiences building a business firsthand. Then we have Biju Dominic, Chief Evangelist, Fractal Analytics, Mr. Nishad, CEO of Teltonika India, and Mr. Deepak Anand, who is an expert in Japanese relationships with India and is an advisor at JCSS Management Consulting. So this is the panel that we have put together for your panel discussion today. So let me invite Mr. Biju Dominic to the first question, opening the panel. Biju, my question to you is, what is, in your expert view, on people's resistance to return to work? How do we navigate to a hybrid work environment successfully? It'll be interesting to hear about your research and your insights on this topic. Over to you, Biju.
Hi everyone, and thank you, Magesh. Work, life, you talk about it, finally, it's all about human behavior. Yes, there is one way of looking at human behavior, that is from what's happening just recently. And from that perspective, when we look at it, Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z might look very different. And it might actually call for new strategies to be developed for each of those. But over the years, I tend to look much more deeper than that, not just even at the cultural level, because trends that we speak about are about 5 years to 10 years old. When you come down to a cultural level, there is culture. At a cultural level, humans have built cultures over the last 50,000 years. But just come down below that. There is a human nature that has been evolving over the last 600 million years. And once we start looking at any human behavior problem from what I call the basic human nature level, you actually start suddenly seeing very interesting insights. And those insights, which are much more long lasting, those insights are much more deeper in trying to make what I call, very effective solutions. To answer, Magesh, your question on what is the fundamental, why is it about human nature that I've really figured out about work, one of the things I've figured out is, yes, thanks to COVID, I think we all got used to being at home. Now, and there's a huge resistance among the employees to come back to work. At a surface level, all of them would speak about the commuting and the torrid time that we were spending on commuting, and now I don't have to do it. But when I go to a human nature, and it's not even human nature, it is almost an animal nature. There's something called territoriality. When I'm in my territory, I'm extremely comfortable. And when you ask me to be in someone else's territory, I'll feel very, very uncomfortable. And I'll always want to come back to my territory. Now, I think work so far has been where I got out of my territory. I put on a dress, put on a certain thing, which is different from what I used to do in my territory. And then I used to go to that particular place and then live by the norms of that territory for a long time. Now, what has happened is thanks to COVID, I could actually be in my own home, in my own territory. Now you suddenly ask employees to get out of that territory. They are saying, no, I'm not too comfortable. That is the key problem that we are facing right now, Magesh.
Thank you, Biju. Thank you. It's good to know that whatever we are seeing in terms of challenges is deeply ingrained to human nature. Therefore, there are solutions that we can access and apply in order to mitigate the problem of people putting resistance to coming back to work. So now let's move on to Sharvani. And Sharvani, I would like to ask you, can you please describe your challenges and insights gained making the transition to post-pandemic work environment? And please tell us about the kind of team that you have built and what challenges you had during the pandemic, as well as what is it that you're facing today. Over to you, Sharvani.
Thank you, Magesh. See, the pandemic actually, I think, unsettled a lot of ways in which we used to traditionally do business, right? So I would like to look at this from probably two perspectives. One is from the whole business angle perspective, and the other is how the teams reacted and how the entire culture of an organization had to probably undergo a change in the last 2 or 3 years. Now, from a business perspective, being a service marketing technology oriented company, we are driven by relationships that we have with our clients. We're driven by one-on-one connections. We're driven by meetings that you have one-on-one to build a sales pitch, to interact with the consumer clients, understand their requirement. And there's a lot of subtlety into these discussions that come in when you're doing a one-on-one meeting. Now, the pandemic put a stop to the entire thing. If at all we have had meetings, we have had meetings which are more online. It's very, very difficult sometimes without the camera also being on to even pick up the pulse of how the meeting is going. You don't know what your customer is feeling when you're pitching an idea. You do not know whether they're even interested in what you're talking about. So these are all very difficult things, especially from a service organization perspective, that we had to teach our people to unlearn and learn during the last couple of years. We actually sometimes blatantly request for cameras to be on, because otherwise it becomes very difficult for us to understand even whether the person is getting through with the idea that we are talking about. So that's one of the key challenges and transitions, and we are actually learning the process. I don't think we've made great discoveries in it. Hopefully life will come back to normal and we go back to interacting with people one-on-one, because that's the best way to, I think, do business. But yes, that was a lot of unlearning and learning we had to do during the process. On the other side of it, being an organization which is so service driven, which is completely dependent on client relationships, the team actually started working out of home was pretty much an impossible task for us, because day-to-day interactions are required. You're required to make sure that you're at a certain place at a certain time if required by the client, or you're interacting with their clients' customers to do business. So all of these things brought about a sea change in the way we did things. Some of the key challenges that I, as a business leader, actually thought, was very different is, one is integrity and work ethics is something that we have all taken for granted over the period of time. That started becoming a question mark, because how do you know whether work is getting delivered or not online? You're a smaller organization, you do not have the facilities of large format organizations which can probably take screen grabs, probably take things like that to keep monitoring people. We don't do that on a normal basis. So how do you transform from being a person dependent organization to a technology dependent organization largely? Because you otherwise run an office environment and people are completely doing what they're expected to do, whereas you don't know what they're doing when they're working from home. That became a challenge for a smaller outfit like us. Second thing is the fact that the connectivity between people went down, because driving relationships for our customers, if you're not interacting on a day-to-day basis internally, it becomes a huge challenge. So these are all transformations that we went through in the last 2 or 3 years. I am definitely confident that things are moving into a hybrid environment. We've learned our ways. Our people have learned our ways in this time and age, because we have a young workforce which is catching on very quickly to the new trends and this thing. But has it been challenging? It has been definitely challenging. Have we learned? Yes, we've learned, and we were forced to learn and unlearn. Would we want to bring in some of the old world things? Definitely yes. But I think hybrid is definitely going to be the way to go ahead, with a little bit of tweaks here and there.
You're on mute, Mike. Yes.
Thank you, Sharvani. You've highlighted many universal points which all of us have experienced, not only in the corporate workplaces and medium and small size companies as well as startups, but also in online education, right? Our children attending online sessions in schools. And what's ironic is that the world is very happy in terms of the camera when they have to click selfies. But apparently there is, it's a paradox that people really don't want to keep their cameras on for their meetings, or whether it is a school meeting or college meeting or, official meeting. So, but you give them the smartphone, they are happy to click away selfies and, post everything that they're doing. So this is a paradox, but interesting insights from you, and the discussion is getting more and more, engaging, hopefully for the audience. So moving on to a very interesting part of the world, and this part of the world is called Japan. Konnichiwa, Deepak-san. And the first question to you is, can you please describe the experience of Japan returning to work in the post-pandemic period? What are the challenges and insights you have gained in your daily interactions with Japanese colleagues in Japan as well as in India? Over to you, Deepak-san.
Thank you, Magesh-san. Thank you very much. And see, I'll put my view a little bit in more macroeconomic perspective. And the thing is that even this pandemic happened, before that also Japan was very well known as a very workaholic society. And it's very inflexible when it comes to the work environment. And also the adaptation to the change is very difficult for Japanese as a workforce. So these are all three important aspects which I wanted to highlight. So what happened when all of a sudden pandemic happened? Japanese were very reluctant to do work from the home. And although they were a little bit forced because of the lockdown, or maybe more than 7 or 8 times lockdown, maybe of 1 month to 3 months time period happened. But during all these periods, Japanese found it very difficult to resume work from the home. Only larger companies were in the position to impose some sort of mechanism to manage the work from home. But most of the workers, they prefer to work from the office because they were not well adapted to the sudden change or sudden disruption which happened all of a sudden. And this was the case since 2020. And before 2020, just for the benefit of audience, I would like to give you one data. Exactly when the pandemic had started, it was January 2020. And at that point of time, some Japanese companies, as a precautionary measure, they had initiated the work from home culture. And that constituted around 6% of the Japanese workforce. But when pandemic reached to its peak, maximum 30% of the workforce, and that too not in the manufacturing sector, but the employees who were mainly handling the managemental work or IT related work, they prefer to stay back at home and manage their work from home. But even in that situation, not more than 30% of Japanese workforce, they were able to, only 30% Japanese workforce were managed to work from home. Remaining 70% still continued with the conventional way, and they prefer to work from office. So that was, from my point of view, the situation didn't change drastically, even pandemic was caused. Now, the only physical difficulty was there that Japanese couldn't make important business decisions. Some of the projects before pandemic, my data says that around 200 Japanese projects were supposed to be implemented in India, mostly industrial projects. Those projects were put on hold because Japanese cannot travel to India and actually took the decision to execute those projects. That one economic delay happened, and but as soon as the pandemic restrictions were withdrawn, still Japan was the last country to withdrew all the strict restrictions. Still, I think it's very difficult for you to get the Japanese visa. Even if you get it, you will get only the single entry visa. So they are restricting the number of foreigners. So that physical business interaction is a little bit of challenge. And that was the place where even personally, when I was interacting with hundreds of Japanese companies in last many months, but they were unable to reach out to any conclusion about executing their industrial project because they are not aware that how the local situations are prevailing and how and with what time frame they can implement their project to India because of the all these restrictions are in place. But as far as Japan domestic work culture is concerned, there is no much change, at least at the workplace, because still majority of the population were working from office. It's only the international business was hampered. And now, once the things have started opening up, I can see the huge number of Japanese visitors are coming in. Almost, we have a direct flight from Bangalore to Narita. And initially, there was only one weekly flight, direct flight, but now the frequency has been increased to 4 weekly flights. So you can just imagine that how much traffic we are receiving and outgoing and incoming traffic we have from Japan. So that is one change has happened, and I feel that this has happened for the good because all of a sudden the number of business queries are quite high. Japanese have adapted to the situation a little bit, and some of the industrial projects query have started pouring in. So in terms of from the Indian point of view, it is quite good because the number of business queries have gone up. From the overall aspect, there is not much difference as far as the work culture is concerned because I hardly see any change management happen during the pandemic.
Thank you, Deepak-san. Your insights are quite, surprising, and the concept of territoriality, which Biju had described earlier in his discussion, seems to be completely warped for the Japanese people because for them the territory is more native. The workplace is more of their native territory than their homes, apparently. We will discuss more on that as we proceed into the session. So next off, I call upon Nishad. And Nishad, my first question to you. Your company, Teltonika, is based out of Lithuania. So can you please describe your challenges and insights gained making the transition to the post-pandemic work environment? What kind of issues you faced, and how are you making good of it, and how are you optimizing in the constraints that you have to do business in? Over to you, Nishad.
Thank you, Magesh. Excited to be a part of this discussion. Quite an interesting panelist. For us, we haven't faced much impact just because we work from home and the post-pandemic situation, because it's more of a cultural differences for a Eastern European country versus an Indian country. But maybe I'll come to that question when it comes to the cultural differences of the work. But for more of a post-pandemic situation, we got the factories where we are manufacturing IoT. So for us, the factories were stuck only for a few days. We managed to restart the factory with the most efficient mechanism of restricting the protocols, and we started running it with a matter of few days. We introduced social distancing monitoring solutions. Later, it went to a few additional customers of us. So basically, when two people come close to a distance, it recognizes the distances and it gives you visible warnings. It gives you audible warnings around you, both the person, so that you can restrict. And then it even records who are all the people who came close. So we introduced such social monitoring, distancing solutions, and which helped us to run the factory effectively. And in terms of the global workforce, if you look at, yes, it changed. It changed the workforce perspective itself. We found interesting changes. The tech team, we found they're working quite better at home. And the sales team, when we say that front end team, the sales business development team, they were not productive as they were before when they were working from office. We found it may be more related to the human nature. Engineers were more of introverts, and they performed better when they were within the wall. And they, as a sales managers, as business development managers, they wanted to talk to people, shake hands with the people, see the faces of the people, and their responses were different. So they found the couch as not an interesting place to work. Maybe they managed to do it for a few days, but we started seeing the differences, and we have to incorporate changes so that the effectiveness of the situation becomes better. So we had no option other than to bring people back on and run mixed cultures of working from home, working from offices in a different ways as and when it was possible. But we use this as an opportunity for the engineers to get more effectiveness in the job. So this was quite interesting statistics from the overall perspective. But when it comes to challenges, yes, we face challenges just like any other organization. As the panelist said, big organization has bigger challenges, and even the smaller organization who were unable to monitor the work, it was having its own challenges. For us, we believed in the best way best way to solve a problem, because if there was a problem, we didn't know what was happening at home. We didn't know what was the working hours. We knew we have the login, we have the logout details, we have no visibility on what exactly was happening. And the stand-up meeting, the evening meetings, nothing worked here. And we believe that bringing people on part of a system could be interesting way to solve this. And we try to bring people part of a system. We had hourly monitoring of tasks, and it was okay in the beginning. It was giving positive results in the beginning, but it was kind of a forced situation. People didn't like it. It's like you can bring in short-term results, but not long-term. People have found their own way around to cover them up. This is us. We have our own mechanism of finding way around. We can find very nice way around as and when you come across a problem. Twice you face that problem, third day I have my own way of solving that problem. It may be buying. You can buy the seatbelt clip from Amazon in India for $200, and you can stop the machine beeping the seatbelt warning, right? So just like that, our guys found mechanism to override it, and we had no other option to bring in a mechanism which is acceptable, which is effective to monitor it. So we identified dictating won't work for a long time. We have to take people into consideration. We try to teach them, which was basically a long-term procedure. We try to teach them why is it needed and what's the purpose of following the mechanism. Upon taking people into consideration, upon making them believe that this idea is working, it started giving us long-term results. So in short term, I would say this was a problem, but it was converted into an opportunity over a period of time, just by taking the confidence, the belief of the people. And until we saw that people doesn't believe, they kind of leaving that opportunity, because they don't also believe us. They're listening to us, they shake their hands, but no, I don't believe this system, so I won't do this. But I shake my heads just to say that, okay, I believe it, just to avoid my current problem, and I will find my own workaround. So this was the general perspective of we faced and how we faced the sales engineering team. But the factory was quite okay. We didn't face much problems when we followed the strict restrictions on the protocols. It worked without a major problem. We found a couple of times we had to shut down the factory, but it was a few days and we could restart that situation. I'm sure we will have another opportunity to talk about the work cultural differences. Over to you, Mahesh.
Thank you, Nishad. Very interesting points. And among many things that you spoke about, what interested me was the fact that you were able to discern the personality differences among the work functions, right? The engineers who love to be in closed doors, so they preferred perhaps work from home, whereas the business development and sales and commercial teams wanted to go out and meet people. So this is so distinct, and this is universally true, perhaps. So thank you for your input. So moving on. Now we are back to our researcher on the brain, Mr. Biju, who writes a very interesting column every fortnight in the Mint. It's called Behavior by Brain. So I encourage you to read it, and that's how I found Biju to speak on this panel. So Biju, my second question to you in the second round is how to deal with Gen Z or Gen Z in today's workplace. What are your recommendations to managers and leaders to succeed in engaging this new generation of team members in our workplaces? Over to you, Biju.
Of course, I think most of people who've joined the corporate world in the last 2 years, for example, our organization, we realized almost 50% of our employees have joined us in the last 2 years during the COVID time. And one of the things which my group CEO often says is that none of them have actually been to a Fractal office. And without being in an office, I don't think any of us know how to build a culture. Culture is when people do come under a physical environment. There are norms, there are behaviors, there are stories, there are a whole lot of things that happen there. If all the employees are sitting at home and that too, as Sharvani mentioned, the cameras are all switched off. How do I ever build a relationship? Because for me to build a relationship, I need to see your eyes. If I don't see, my visual system is almost all the 11 million bits of processing our brain has. 10 million of them are in the visual system. And the moment I switch off my camera, you're just not seeing me. You're just hearing me. That means I'm working at almost, and sound is very, very small part of it. So as much as there are certain changes that have happened, let's call it, there are some realities, and they are biological realities. And whether, again, I'm repeating, whether it's Gen Z or any generation that you speak about, those don't change, and COVID also don't change that. And I think, and I'm saying it's just not for Gen Z employees that we should actually keep this in mind, because there is no doubt there's a perception among everyone that the workplace has changed post the COVID, and there's no doubt about it. And I think all the three of our speakers did speak about some of those changes happening, which is the hybrid work culture coming in. No more 9 to 5. There will be flexibility. If there is a morning, there is a lot of traffic, people will say, okay, come a bit late, 10 o'clock, and then you can actually do that. So those are realities. But let's talk about some of the fundamental facets about work. Man is a social being. And I think work was always where I got out, interacted with other people, and not just the salespeople, Magesh. It's even factory workers who was on a machine. You might be working there, but he comes. He generally chats with people, or in between he goes to the canteen and sits with people and has a chai and speaks about it. It all builds that organization. So it is not. We can't just look at it as independent individuals. So I think that, for example, that is a reality. Second, as I clearly mentioned, that visual is a very important facet. Eye-to-eye relationship, contact is a very important part of relationship. So even in a meeting, I think I had written that, and I had looked on the basis studies which said, forget about the eye-to-eye contact. The dress that I'm wearing below this white shirt actually matters. Now, it's not seen in the screen. What is my preparation for this panel discussion? Now, none of the world knows am I wearing a shorts? Am I wearing something else below this? But somewhere, the fact that I'm not prepared for this particular meeting, or am I prepared? I'm not prepared, depends upon what it means to me as a person. And so what I wear, the dress below the camera, matters a lot. And these are realities. And you can't run away from it, because that's how the human brain has been constructed. And I think the other very important facet is innovation. And innovation, we know, has never come when I'm working on a machine. Innovation has always come because I'm generally interacting with people. Generally, I'm in the manufacturing setup. Generally, I saw the guy from the sales guys or someone else who's sitting in the canteen, generally chatting, and he talks about some consumer, and they talk about it. Oh, Aisa, okay. And then I'm sure there's a pollination that happens, like a little bee that goes around. And that's how organizations, factories were created, offices where a bit of a pollination that's happening around because we're interacting with people. And I would say that in the change situation, of course, certain flexibility and certain things should come in and should be. And that rigidity of the past was not really, was not required. But some of these realities, what I would call the biological realities of work, has to be incorporated into the work. And I think somewhere, when we speak to each individual employees, he might say, because of the territoriality that I was talking about, he doesn't want to step out of it. But I think somewhere, I think there has to be a communication about these things. And I think we have to tell them. And I think somehow we have to convince them. And it's a two-way communication. I'm sure they're going to stay back in their territories. But from an organization point of view, these are all some of the things they need to do. I think employees also should know that their promotions, they get to know about opportunities of where I can work, their own ability to come up with innovation, their own enjoyment will come in when they interact with people. So they also should realize that by being at home and only at home and switching off the cameras, they are not becoming better employees. So for you, because humans actually work very well when we are when we work on a social ecosystem, and I think they need to realize it, because and most of the younger generation might not have experienced. Most of those who left the colleges in the last 2 years, 3 years, and who joined the workforce, they never experienced organizational life. Most of for them, I think it's important that we tell them what a real corporate world is all about and what are some of the biological realities of work are. And I think we communicate this effectively and then build rituals around these things. You can't force them, but I think this is what I would actually do to make sure that that we actually deal with a new situation while retaining some of the core facets of the biologies of work.
Very interesting, Biju. Very interesting. Thank you so much for all those insights, and the storytelling was impressive. So one thing that you brought about, which is a stark reality, in some cases even a dark outcome, is virtual onboarding of teams, which was done en masse during the completely lockdown situation in most corporations around the world. Of course, it was a force of the situation. And I clearly remember how people lost out on the warmth of teams welcoming them, whether it's the HR business partner or just your buddy in your own team who's assigned to take you around office. All of this was missed by the people who got onboarded during the lockdown. And some of these day zero meetings that you have with your bosses, your super bosses, are so telling. They set the direction, and they set the momentum and tone of the culture of the organization that you've just about entered. And not only of what is expected of you, but in those stories that the bosses and super bosses offer to you over a cup of tea or coffee in their cabins, there's a world of wisdom. And one such of the many moments, I work for many companies around the world, or one such telling moments which I always remember is one of my bosses or super bosses mentioned to me that, Magesh, there are two things, two people you cannot change in your life. One is your father and the other is your boss. So and with that comment, it made it very clear to me that I have to make sure that from day zero I have to be flexible and adapt, and things are not going to change to my way, but it has to be a blend of both. And that is something which unfortunately a lot of the Gen Zers missed out because of virtual onboarding. And some of them, even not only were they onboarded virtually, but some of them were disillusioned and they even quit the company within the first few weeks, which is a massive tragedy for the colleagues in HR and talent organizations who slogged very hard to bring these new kids on the block on board after so much of negotiations, and then finally they chose not to continue, and that's an anticlimax. But those are some of the challenges that we faced. So thank you for your insights. And moving on to
can I just add one more point?
Of course, please go ahead, Biju.
Just as a reminder to everyone who's listening in, many times people say in a hybrid culture where people are not coming in, is it possible to build a strong culture within an organization? My advice is just look at the organized religion. And for last few thousands of years, I think, they actually, people are all scattered in their homes, but what they make sure is that every day, once a day in a week, a Sunday for the Christian, and Friday for the Muslims. Actually, they get them to come to one particular place. And for the next 1.5, 2 hours when they come in, there is a very strongly choreographed rituals which they actually create to make sure there is a very strong bonding that happens between these particular people. They're not doing any work. So I think there's a lot to learn for the organizations in this hybrid work culture from the organized religion, how they're creating a very strong community by these weekly meetings and the rituals around it. Just a pointer that I wanted to add.
Yeah, absolutely, Biju. I definitely, your insight, coming from organized religion is very pertinent. And there's an old adage, right? The family that eats together stays together. So that also is slowly, dissolving, unfortunately, in our cultures because of the many screens that we tend to live with. But yeah, all valid points, and not everything that is old is to be thrown out. We have to consider, how to build opportunities to, work together and live together. So moving on to another question to Sharvani. And Sharvani, you're a woman leader, you're a woman entrepreneur who started this business out of an idea. So very important to have your views on how do you deal with gender bias in your workplace? And also, I'd like to know, or we'd like to know, as a leader, how do you ensure an equitable culture across your team members? So please, do comment and give us your point of view on how you managed to optimize in these situations.
On a lighter note, look at this panel, Magesh. Gender bias still exists. I'm happy to be one of the panelists, but in a lot of panel discussions, I've observed that there's hardly any, especially if it's an automotive field and things like that. There's so many women leaders, but they're not a part of these panel discussions. So does gender bias exist? It does. Have I faced it? I've faced it a lot. From the start of my career, when I began in a hardcore engineering company, being a non-engineer, when I joined in, I had to really put my foot down and establish the fact that I'm a management trainee out here in the marketing department, and I'm not here for a secretarial job. And it took me a while to get people to realize that there can be a woman non-engineer doing very engineering related marketing activity, and that took time to establish and gain respect out of my colleagues. So having been through this and having had the first 10 years of my career across different industry verticals, I think I've faced it pretty much in every domain. But I think that is the negative part of it. But I think a lot of organizations have risen to the fact that this exists. A lot of organizations are doing things positively to change this today. At Anectos, the company that I co-run, we consciously try to make it gender equal. Probably a lot, if I can proudly say, a little gender partial too. All things being equal, we go ahead and hire a woman employee because we believe, with our experience, we believe they bring in a lot more stability and a lot more loyalty vis-a-vis men. Nothing against it, but it's pure experience that has led us to make this decision. And this is kind of been built over a period of time. In our business also, it requires us to, since we're in service, since we're in marketing technology, we do have to have a mix of both genders. When it comes to a lot of relationship, a lot of customer orientation and things like that, a woman fits in more naturally in that. I'm not biasing here. It just happens beautifully so that the relationships are built and managed much more strongly. So those roles have been filled and very, very successfully handled by women leaders in our company. And when it comes to engineering, we have a mix. We've had both men and women in the engineering domain when we're building technology. So that's been a very mixed environment that we've had. And customer service is and sales, again, it's a very mixed environment, because I think sales is a very is a skill oriented domain. So you have good people on from both genders. So it's completely driven by how good you are at what you're doing. So this is how we have built it. But like I said, we made it gender partial. And for me, I think more from an equitable culture orientation kind of a thing, if you want. I would like to give you an example. We're a small, relatively small SME, right? So we're a MSME outfit. Now, in India, when you're recruiting or managing company, managing and driving a business, which is a decade old today, we have different departments. While the departments are, say, technology, they have business, and then there's customer service. Now you need to hire different kinds of people for each of these segments. Now, and each of them come from different demographic backgrounds, they come from different educational backgrounds, and they come with different from different generations too. So when we started Anectos, the kind of people that we were hiring, say in 2011, 2012, they're probably Gen X people. Vis-a-vis now, it's probably a lot more the millennials and the Gen Z, right? So we ourselves have had to have a transformation in terms of the expectation management of people that are coming into an organization. And being in Bangalore, which is a very tech dominated industry, the expectation of people who come to join you is also very different. To give you an example, if I'm conducting an interview, some of the questions that we're asked by the youngsters is, so do you have a canteen facility in the organization? Do you have a cab facility in the organization? So these are all things that are expectations that people already come with when they're joining. Take it back to a couple of decades when we joined the workforce, we were just happy to be employed. All of these things were not even consideration segments when we thought about getting into a job and learning on the job. Now that is very different today. They come with a set of expectations. They come with, evaluating you as an employer vis-a-vis accepting that you're getting an opportunity to learn, opportunity to grow, even though you're a fresher. So the whole mindset, I'm not saying it is right or wrong, but the whole mindset has gone through a change. So this is something that we are trying to address as we go along. We make sure that when we're having a discussion, before, nobody used to ask us, what is my, when I move out of this company, what role do I go to, right? Nobody asked us these questions in an interview. Today, a young person whom I'm interviewing actually asked me, so after spending X number of years in your organization, what is my next step? What can I grow into? Now, these are things that we were not prepared for before, but I think now we know that if you stay, this is the kind of career growth you can have here. If you want to move out, obviously, which is a natural course, after 2, 3, 5 years, this is the kind of career path that we can grow out for you. And this is how you can grow into something, going abroad, going into your next career level. So these are all things that we have over a period of time learned how to address. And this obviously has nothing to do with gender, but a very different work culture is what I'm seeing from the youngsters. Adding to Biju's point from his earlier discussion, one thing that I realized during the pandemic is also when we were hiring interns, summer interns. These children have not even ever, being an MBA intern, have never done an internship in the market. And we as an organization felt that is such a loss. Imagine doing a professional course and not being able to go hands-on and learn, and just learning in a closed house environment. What do you actually learn? Because especially coming from a sales and marketing background or an engineering background, if you're not out there talking to people, learning from the industry, learning gap that I think we have to kind of adapt to and quickly make them realize and make them learn what they've missed out on both in the education space and in the workspace. That is a very fast learning that all of them have to do if they have to keep up and learn a lot more.
Thank you, Sharvani. Very interesting points. And with regards, gender bias, this is of course a global phenomena which exists not only in corporate boards of companies which span across a century or more, but also in the attitudes and communication systems that has been predominantly designed from the industrial age. But unfortunately, when we moved over to the internet age, nobody really thought about communication systems and behaviors and attitude that needs to be changed and modified to make sure that there's a more democratic approach to the workforce that they are not only recruiting, but the workforce that already exists within large companies. And but now I think there's a ray of hope, because when you look at startups, most of the startups which are coming out, I'm not sure about the status of gender bias, but there are many ventures, by people like you, women entrepreneurs who are leaders in their own right, developing teams which are eclectic and creating innovation, creating, capturing, and delivering value in every sphere of life. So I think it will only get better, and discussions like this, which are public, need to be vocalized, and those opinions also need to be considered and internalized and assimilated by organizations and people leaders and talent leaders. So thank you for all your insights. And one country in the world in terms of gender bias which exists, I'm not sure if it exists today, but we need to know that what is the current status. So I call upon Deepak-san to speak about what is the role of women in Japan's workforce. Deepak-san, what are the emerging trends in women participating in Japan's corporate culture? How are things as you see things today, and how it has transitioned in the pandemic? Over to you, Deepak-san.
Thank you, Magesh. Thank you, Sharvani, for putting up your perspective. And as far as Japan is concerned, I think this is one of the very few countries in the world where the population of women population is higher than the male population. So as per the government data, out of 100 females, there are 95 males. So Japan is more populous in terms of women population. And this is one of the unique aspects. As far as the Japanese society is concerned, all from the social aspects, there is no discrimination between men and women. So based upon my experiences, I can definitely say it with full conviction. But when it comes to workplace, I would say it is still, there is a lot of gap to be filled. And I won't say that there is a discrimination, but the participation of the women at management level or decision-making level is very less. So if you say the number of Japanese women entrepreneurs are very less compared to male entrepreneurs. Going by the data, out of hardly 12% of Japanese companies have women as their senior management position, at their senior managerial position. And if I say women in the Japanese company's board as a board member, then hardly 18% companies will have some women representation. So this is still very low. From that, based upon this data, we can always say that Japanese workforce or workplace is still not very adaptive to the women leaders. And based upon, again, my experience, I can say that majority of the Japanese male population, they are still not very comfortable to work under the woman leader. So that from that point of view, I feel still there is a discrimination. As far as total workforce is concerned, 45% of the Japanese workforce is women, but majority of the women are in the very part-time kind of job, because they have to take care of their household duties as well. So average working hour is, as far as corporate is there, it is less compared to men. And most of the job is kind of part-time job. But there is a kind of active steps has been taken up by the Japanese government to increase the participation of women in the Japanese economy. And if it is the startup trend, then I can definitely see that there's a lot of visible changes happening in terms of women founders are coming up and giving a lot of new ideas for different startups. So that change is visible, but still a lot of gap needs to be filled. As far as the salary gap is there, it is still one of the highest among OECD economies. Japan ranks second highest in terms of pay parity, and there is a gap of 25% if I just give you the lump sum data. So these are the gaps, it still exists. But when it comes to the social discrimination, it is not there. It is not there at all. I still say our country is still, we have to learn from Japanese from that point of view. But of course, at the workplace, a lot of disparity still exists. So that is one area which Japanese government is trying to address.
Thank you, Deepak-san. Very interesting insights. And again, what we can see is that the remnants of the industrial age, the post-World War rise of Japan, the rising sun, right? All the systems, processes were designed for the uprising of Japan and made in Japan in the industrial age. And even though in the initial days, all hands were on board in the Japanese factories, be it men or women, in the post-World War period. But slowly, somehow, I think men took predominance and women were left behind. Perhaps in the new millennia, in the internet era, things will change, and the digital interventions, which is now possible, will make it will accelerate more participation of women into the corporate world and contribute more towards the upliftment of other women. So thank you for those insights, but interesting to note that there has been some progress, but a long way to go in terms of corporate work culture. So over to Nishad now, and the question that I would like to put forth to Nishad in this round is, what are the changes in work culture in Lithuania, and how has it affected your India business team, Nishad? Over to you.
Thank you, Magesh, for the question. I have been working with the Eastern European company as director body for the past 5 years, so I believe that's pretty good enough to comment about this question. But I have to agree that it was not easy to recognize the differences. It is the cultural differences really taking too much of time to learn by the time you recognize it. So we give books to, teachings to our people when new people join us to understand the differences in the culture to make it faster. I would say Indians are flexible at work, right? We take an extra hour break sometimes for the lunch, and there is no one has a problem with it. And but we know how to compensate it on a later stage of the day, or maybe on another day. We do even compensate it also. So sometimes we join meetings on Saturdays, but it's absolutely normal, I would say. If somebody sends a meeting request on a Saturday and if somebody rejects it, I think in India it was not normal to reject it, but today we've learned that yes, I can reject it because I am working from home. I created this culture, and somebody can send a meeting request at 8 in the evening, and still people have the right to reject it. But it was not there before. So we became flexible, and it was like I asked my colleague in Lithuania how their life, those people who worked in the headquarters, been working, the good transfer to India. I've been asking them, what is your feedback on the change? How do you see the work culture? You worked 3 more years there, and see now you're getting into your own country. They are Indians, and how do you see the changes here? So basically, it was quite an interesting answer. It was like one guy answered me. It was 8 to 5. And evenings was free. I used to come to my work at 8:30, and I used to leave my office at 5 o'clock. And I had my evening. I had my time with my family. And the changes now, and I was attending like 1 or 2 meetings, and I was productive. The efficiency was good. And now in India, back in India, I came to my home country. I spent an hour in the morning for traffic, an hour in the evening, maybe sometimes more in the traffic. I'm still coming at 9 o'clock. I'm still sitting in my office at 8 o'clock, thinking my day is damn unfinished. So this is the difference basically, and they experience that difference. It has many reasons for recognizing that difference, but actually this is the fact. So people here get frustrated because of this, because you don't have time, you don't have personal time, and we cannot improve the traffic here, but we have many mechanisms to overcome things. Another interesting factor is holidays. In the country, my headquarters is there. Holidays are actually to be taken. It's a liability to the organization. And the organization is answerable if employee doesn't use the holidays according to the system. This is monitored by the government, right? Where we are living in a culture where we offer leave buyback to employees. There are still organizations who can sell the leave back to back to the organization, and the employee gets benefited, monetary benefit out of it. So he is preferring monetary benefit than his personal benefit, his personal relaxation. He's not getting rejuvenated, and this is basically resulting in him breaking out one of the day. It's just that it may not be today, it may be tomorrow, it may be day after tomorrow, but this is unavoidable. It will happen. So this is a difference which I have seen, which I believe my country should bring back, or at least they should bring in policies to cover them up, and should look at the employee perspective, not from the organizational perspective. What's the consideration here? What's the consideration here for the employees? It is like it's more of a pro organization, and it has to change to a pro employee. That's because the employees organization, we hire employees, and the employees does the business. They run the organization, right? The organization is not run by itself. It has the employees taking care of it. So this is what I have been facing. This is what we face when we hire experienced resources from within the country. Another interesting thing is that the biggest challenge is, especially when experienced people comes to our organization, we have seen it's tough to make them unlearn. They come with expectations, they come with a lot of things, and they come, oh, this is tough. This is something which is entirely different. Sometimes they even understand it after a few months. And we find it very difficult to make them unlearn. And when they unlearn, sometimes they are unable to unlearn. They will say goodbye in a very short span. But sometimes they are able to unlearn. They are able to continue. They are able to cope up. It completely depends upon their capability and their smartness. So this mechanism of using the pupil in the organization has to be regulated by the government. And that's the only way. Otherwise, it will be in the control of organizations. Some organization will have better policies. Some organization, depending on the organizational structure, they might have their own policies. So this is one difference I feel like in terms of work culture. And another point is in the term of behavioral ways. It's more of we Indians are more diplomatic. We answer between the lines. When we have to give a negative feedback, we don't give it directly. So most of the times it is always, even if it's on a one-on-one, it's always between the lines, so that I do not want to make you sad. I do not want to give you a wrong impact about, I don't want to demotivate you right away. So it is basically between the lines, where I have seen it's less diplomatic, more straightforward from my colleagues in Lithuania. So it's their way of conveying messages. And sometimes the work culture, if you look at the work culture perspective, we say yes and we don't do it. And we expect, when we say yes, we expect them to do it. And we say it's a yes, and we end up in being, okay, partially done, not doing it until you ask me again, oh, that was important, I will go back and do it. So it's not that I'm not capable of doing it. I am capable of doing it, but I have my choice of completing a task, which is basically a different interesting factor. When somebody accepts it, nobody wanted to reject it. Nobody wanted to say, no, I do not want to do it. I'm not talking about the entire persons. Most of the workforce accepts it and do not complete it. But whereas there are workforces which on the other side, which says, no, I cannot do this. This is not my task. I do not want to do this right away in the beginning. And this rejection is coming right in the assigning time itself. So you can prepare your plan B, you can complete your task. Whereas the first stage, you have an expectation, okay, my task will be done. And end of the time, I understand that my task is not done. And I would have created my own plan B after a different scenario. So people today, I believe, they're not working for bread and butter anymore. They are not even working for statuses. They're not much concerned about the work status or the job status is what. They are working for satisfaction. Maybe the perks will help them. They need satisfaction. If you satisfy them, the more the pupil enjoys that their work, the longer they stay in the team. This is my experience, this is what I've seen in my team. We have people, we started this organization 5 years back. So we have people 5 years old, and we have people, I would say, 6 months old. So my experience is like, it has to be satisfaction. People should be happy coming to office, coming to the workplace, and enjoying that workplace. I remember our panelist, Biju, said, the territory. You make office as my territory. I'm ready to come in. But if I believe my home is my territory, I'm not happy to come to office. Come on, I'm still happy in my territory. So this is basically converting that territory and making them comfortable in making them that this is your territory available. So we need people to relax. We have interesting, I've been remembering statistics. The biggest exits within in my organization, the biggest exits was within the first year. If you are able to maintain an first year for 6 years, and the normal scenario, but when you are unable to maintain it, or if an employee is coming in, he recognizes this is my place or not within the first year, and so the biggest iteration is happening within the first 1 year, and organizations should consider their people have to relax, spend their time with family. Today, it is not organization's concern; it is the people's concern. When organization recognizes, they understand that the stress will come out one day, and the people and the organization will lose this biggest asset, which is people today. Those people are built over the past many years. So I'm today. So this is a mix of things. I'm able to sit at my home in Kerala, in a village, enjoying the cyclone rain here, and I'm able to complete my task. So it shouldn't be both the side. It should be a mixed, regulated, and the ownership has to be taken by the employee. When the employee is able to take, okay, this is my responsibility, I am responsible for my work, then it makes sense for them to complete that task, and then effectiveness coming in. I believe this is my experience in terms of the cultural differences. Over to you, Magesh.
Thank you very much, Nishad. Very articulate and quite illustrative. Yes, it's quite clear to us that in India, work expands to fill time. And from a European mindset, you have clear boundaries between work life and personal lives, and you never negotiate or compromise on those boundaries. So, this is very distinct and very clear from what you have mentioned. And, since you are managing a team in India, a business team in India, but the value system comes from Lithuania, which is your headquarter, quite a interesting set of insights. Now I move over again to Biju, and I want to bring in Biju to speak to this question. And the question to you, Biju, is: from your research, can you please share insights into how the human brain is coping with the digital deluge we experience every day? What are your recommendations for everyone to live in harmonious balance of the digital and physical lives, or rather the phygital lives that we have to live in today? Over to you, Biju.
Yeah, I think the brain has never been used to so much of inputs coming in. So I think enough data is there about that WhatsApp and all of them are sending in, because for what we have today is an always on, always with you medium, like mobile phone, and which is sending in so much of information out there. And I think our brain is not really ready to cope with a lot of that particular information. Again, I go back to the basics of human beings, because we need to find time, because these are things that the last 1-2 years it has sort of been forced upon us on our brain. And I think what we need to do is to go back to our own, some of the basics. For example, what has happened is, even what the social media has done is that social media has created fairly sort of bit more increase in what we call the weak ties. So school friends and others that we had, I think we actually now connecting with them much more. We are sending them happy birthdays. But I think what really makes us very comfortable as individuals is our strong ties. For example, Robin Dunbar, I'm sure all of us know about him. He had said that the number of people that we can actually have a real relationship with is actually 5. But the problem with today's generation is that maybe the older generation had about 4 to 5 people with whom they could open their hearts and speak to. But today's study shows 33% of today's kids don't even have one person to whom they can actually open up their minds and speak. So today's generation is much more lonelier than the previous generation. There's no doubt about it. And things like COVID, which is actually forcing us to sit at home, is again making us far more lonelier. So I think I really like what Nishad said, that I think the organizations have to actually now become territories which people start enjoying it. I think with the changes, we also need to make changes. Earlier, if people were, working in their office and they went back to home for relaxation. Now in the hybrid culture, they're all working at home. Now, do they come to office to again do more work? Or should they actually come now to office to just chit chat and just build relationship with people and build connections with people? So I think we need to redefine our own office situation in this new context. And I have no doubt that the amount of relaxations and opportunities for relaxations in offices now will have to become much, much more than what it was actually before. So, but it has to be far more relaxing. 2, we have to create opportunities where our employees can interact with other employees. That is for sure. And again, I go back to what one of the points with Nishad was speaking about is, I think there is, with work from home, there's another factor that has come in because earlier the family was sort of a bit cut off because you went, worked, and then you came back home. Now you're working from home. There is your work identity and home identity are getting mixed up. As the meetings is on, the child will come in and stand by and say, Mama, Mama, please feed me. Now there is a clash that is really happening out there. So in a way, as far as the child is concerned, this organization is actually taking away my mama or papa, otherwise is not speaking to me because he's in an office. Now, let me say that means the family has become much more integral to our employees, let's call it the work life. And I think organizations have to realize that. So far, we have had maybe just one insurance for our family and something else. And that was the only connection the organization had with employees' family. Now I would actually say, now you need to create far more better connections. Actually, the good old days, if you look at it, now look at the army cantonment, the whole stay, all of it, the families of people, they were all together. Even public sector companies had their own, all the employees stayed together in the townships. Now, if you look back, it was wonderful because in the township itself, the families created connections of each employee. They created their own connections. Their kids actually went to the same school. And I think we need to learn some of those and then bring back and actually create, organizations should create better connections with the employees. And the good thing is that when the employees actually have a good connection with the organization, what happens is, assume there is a tension in the office and I go back in the evening and I sort of tear and say, I don't want to go back to that place. It's such a bad place. And then suddenly your wife would say, hey, it's okay. I know last time, they've been nice to us. They gave this and ta. If she can be the soothing person who almost speaks on behalf of the organization, it can be a wonderful thing. And I know there is this organization in Madras, maybe I can name it also, this Breaks India. So I remember the HR manager of Breaks India telling me that when Diwali comes, they make sure that the gift they give goes only to one place in the house. that is to the kitchen. So I can almost say when the husband comes back in the evening and shouting at the boss and what's happening in the office, and she's preparing her coffee, she looks at it, okay, this has been given by Bricks India last Diwali, or this vessel gave to me, the Diwali before that. Now, what happens is she, in her minds, after that, when she takes the coffee to the husband, will be much more nicer to the organization. Now, it's not to be taken that lightly. I know I'm just saying it's not that light as that. But I think, how do we get the the families of the employees to be as loyal to the organization as much as the employee? So that could be another factor that could actually make things now much better in this same scenarios. So these are some of the things I would keep in mind to in these change times, to actually take care of, let's call, the changes in the digital media in the modern world. But a lot of it, if you see, I'm talking about going back to some of the strengths of the previous ways of working, the public sectors and others, and then trying to bring that back in a new form in the new organization. That's what I would do. So what we need is not new solutions, but what we need is a bit of a, slightly call it refined versions of some of our traditionally strong principles of work, family, cultures, and bringing it into the new context. I think is what we need today.
Very interesting, Biju. Very interesting, and very unheard of anecdotes. So thank you for that. So I think the points that you raised, the insights are quite pertinent. So one thing that I note is that previously, for team building, offices and team leaders in offices had to take the teams out of the office, so to speak. You take them to a resort or take them away from the office to build a team, that team building outing to build camaraderie. Now, what you have pointed out is, actually the 1 or 2 days that you're expected to come to office these days, perhaps is the team building day, right? So your office has now become the, weekly venue for team building and socializing, perhaps to have a lot more camaraderie, which are missing because, you are at home. So that's one point which I really liked about what you spoke. And the other point, how does one mitigate the work stress by family members actually making comments? Because now you are sitting at home and you just got off a conference call where, either you got blasted or your presentation did not work, or, technology did not give you all the support and your presentation failed because of broadband connectivity, whatever it may be. But you have, counselors. Those counselors could be your kids, it could be your dog, your cat, or your life partner. So these are the, very different situations and scenarios that we are seeing. The boundaries of family and work teams have completely disappeared, of course, right? So most of our work teams definitely know about the pets we have at home and the kids we have at home, or whether we don't have kids or whatever. There's a lot more, personal knowledge, so to speak, because we've kind of allowed the office to come through the camera into our, places of residence. Now, I need to break away from the questions that we have set, because there are 2 pertinent questions from the audience. And since we have only 11 minutes left, I'd like to throw 2 questions to the panel. Anyone can take it. The first one that has come to us is questions to all the jury. Since work from home is preferred medium by most, and especially women employees, their performance is up by 20%, according to this statement. Still, technology companies are asking them to come back to office for full-time work. There is no motivation for them to return to daily office work. What should the organization offer them in order to lure them back to office? So anyone from the panel, would you like to respond to this query which has come to us from the audience?
I would like to take this up, maybe because the
Sure.
strategy is from my side.
Sure.
I can answer it. The question is like, you said it's work from home is better, then why you're not letting it happen, right? When I said work from home was better, I also said it was not good for another set of people, right? So it may be because you're talking about the another set of the people, or it may be because about the project you're working. You may be an engineer, but the project you're working may require availability and presence right along with your colleagues. So it is completely up to the decision of the organization. There is no enforcement just because a rule in any of the organization. I believe the organization works for the betterment of the organization, which is basically the betterment of the employee. So it is up to the person and up to the group, up to the project, why a presence in office is required. It may be because of many other reasons also. It may be because my data, this is my data, right? This is my data, how my statistics was talking to me. And maybe for another organization, maybe they are involved into a different way of business, different way of building things. They have their own statistics, and they will have they might have a different statistics, which eventually brings you back into in home, from home to back to the work. I have seen companies with exclusive work from home. That means companies doesn't have an office. They most of their employees are working from home, and there are companies who's been successful in this. So it doesn't mean that work from home is bad. Whether we work from home or work from office, work with ownership, working with efficiency is the factor here. So it is basically up to your organization to decide whether you should come back to decide the efficiency or not.
So Sharvani, thank you, Nishad. Sharvani, can you respond to this? Because the question is about especially female employees, so from your point of view as a woman leader, what would you do? Because you definitely have a lot of women team members on your team. So how do you deal with this question? Here there's a statement here which says 20% higher performance. Has this been true? What is your experience in your organization?
I think it is totally driven by the roles that every person will be playing and the responsibility that that role will carry. At the end of the day, it is completely so. If it's a technology space and an engineering space, and if that can be delivered via a work from home model where you really don't need to interact with people that much, and you're an individual contributor, then maybe it works working from home. But if you're a part of a project team that requires you to constantly speak with and interact with your colleagues and your customers, and then come out with an innovation or a solution, then I think it is perfectly okay for an organization to ask you to come back to work, because that requires the job and the role and the responsibility is required you to spend that many hours with people delivering what you have to. So I think it is completely governed by the role that that person will have to play. If you're an individual contributor, great. Then you have to convince your manager that you're as effective and as efficient working from home vis-a-vis being at office. But if your role requires you to collaborate, I think it's very right that an organization is calling you back.
Thank you, Sharvani. Deepak-san, I would like to put the next audience question to you. And we have a question from one Mr. Rahul. In the age of digitization, how do you see the role of HR department going forward? Deepak-san, can you please respond to this?
Yeah, I think even from the point of view of my companies where I'm advising, I see that recruitment is a day-to-day affair. And so many startups who have been supporting the HR recruitment process through digital, by digitalizing the whole thing, it is becoming very handy for us because it saves a lot of time and it saves a lot of human effort to filter down the prospective candidate list. And we are able to save a good amount of time when we go for recruitment of the resources. So since the entire process is automated, so some of the prominent startups are supporting us in those areas. So personally, I feel that this is going to be very crucial, especially in countries like India, where the requirement of workforce, especially in IT domain and other service sectors, which is very high. I think the DX solutions will play a very crucial role, without any doubt.
Thank you, Deepak-san. So what you're trying to say is essentially digital is the way to go.
Yes.
But human intervention and human interactions are key to succeed in the talent department of the organization, as it is in every other part of the organization as well, and which is what is the core theme of this entire panel discussion. One question to Mr. Biju from the audience. Now, can you tell us benefits of mindfulness through your experience and what one should do to digital detox? Biju, would you like to respond to this?
Yeah, I think digital detox, spend more time away from the digital world. I think we need to find ways to do that, which is to relax and interact with people. Because again, I repeat, see, digital, all these are just what has happened the last 1-2 years. But for the last 600 million years, there is a way in which humans have evolved. That doesn't change. Those fundamental constructs don't change over what happened in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And I think we are social people. We need to interact with people. Now, even when someone said, I work very well at home and that's perfectly fine, obviously in the short term, a lot of things can happen. But end of the day, if you don't interact with people, end of the day, if you don't meet new people and interact with people, it does affect you. There's no doubt about it. So this one is that we need to create rituals where you actually move out and meet people. That's exactly what organized religion is teaching you. Come, meet people on a community basis, meet them. And there is a help that comes from the community for you overall as a back for you, because no man can live as an island journeying through this life alone. And I think that is what it is. With your digital world and being in that particular world, that's not human. The human is being social. So create more social opportunities of interaction with your friends, with your whoever. That I leave it to you. But I think you need to do at least for an hour or two, at least every week. That's again, I'm repeating, that's what we can learn from the organized religion, how they build strong communities. And I think there's a learning for us from there.
Thank you, Biju. I think you've covered it all. Human connection is fundamental, and no amount of digital detox will be of therapeutic value unless and until you are able to connect with fellow human beings. And in reaching out and collaborating and communicating, you can find yourself again and again and create better versions of yourself, rather than try to do that in isolation and increasing yourself. Moving towards more and more isolating yourself is surely a way to lose your balance and lose your harmony in life. So those are the questions from the audience. So we have just 2 minutes left. So I just want each panelist to either speak one word of advice to the Generation Z entering the workforce. How do you think, in your view, they can become successful as they enter the workforce and become contributing citizens of their communities and companies and organizations that they will work for? So starting from Sharvani, what is your word of advice?
You come from a very connected world. So I would just tell all the Gen Zers that be open. There's a lot of learning to do. There's a lot that you can learn from experience, and also teach. Because today, I think organizations see the most multi-generational workforce at the same time in the same place. So what the Gen Z can bring is the connections from the outside world, which can be taught to a lot more older people and learn from them and make a better place of the workplace.
Thank you. Deepak San?
Yeah, because we are in the age of data, and a lot of data is flowing on everyday basis to everyone's mind. So my only advice to Generation Z is that try to channelize those data in the meaningful way and try to keep learning, because there is no end to learn anything new, and try doing something which is exciting for you every day. So there should be some vision that how they can channelize their thoughts, because I think they are pretty confused in terms of their expectations. So if they can channelize the data in better way, I think they are the generations to follow in the future.
Thank you, Deepak San. Nishad, over to you. One quick word of advice to the next generation of
I
people?
wouldn't take more than 10 minutes, 10 seconds. It's just that I wish whether we work from home or work from office or work from a different location, take ownership of the work and put yourself into that, then the efficiency will come out. This is what exactly every organization is looking for. A big thanks to you, Magesh, to the organizers for giving me the privilege of including my thoughts here.
Sure. Thank you, Nishad. Biju, the final word.
I think my advice to all the younger generation is at least have not a 5, but at least 2 or 3 good friends with whom you can actually open your hearts and cry out, man. And that's what you need. That is much, much, much more than thousands of connections in your Facebook and in your LinkedIn. So have some core 2, 3 good friends in life.
Great. Thank you so much, my fellow panelists. And it's been a fantastic session. And I'm sure the audience will get a lot from this, as this session has been recorded. I'm sure other people will play it back and for those who have missed and learn from it. It's been a pleasure to host, and thank you very much to DMI, and all the best to Samurai Awards. And thank you very much for your valuable time, Sharvani, Nishad, Biju, and Deepak Sam. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Magesh.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.